I'm just saying, one more yard at Super Bowl 49, and this is an entirely different conversation that we're having right now. Welcome, everybody, to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Gary, and I'm representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about Pete Carroll and his Hall of Fame chances potentially to get enshrined into canon someday. He was the head coach for these three teams behind me right here, with the Jets, the Pats, and most notably with the Seahawks, where he had a lot of success, made it to the Super Bowl twice. He won Super Bowl 48, giving the team their first and only title in franchise history. And now, if this is the end of the road for Pete Carroll, there's the obvious talk of, is he a Hall of Famer? Will we see his bust one day in canon? And it's going to be close. It's going to be close. I got to be honest. I don't think Pete Carroll makes it anytime soon. Obviously, the pro with Pete Carroll is that he's got 170 wins. It's a lot of wins. Every single coach with a title with more wins than that is either active, like Belichick, Reed, or Mike Tomlin, or is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame already. So usually that's a pretty good baseline. If you have more wins than that, and you have a Super Bowl championship, or an NFL championship, or whatever you want to call it, you're in. Having said that, that's about the only thing that Pete Carroll is going for him, and that's why it's going to be a very, very uphill climb for Carroll to make it as of this moment. Number one, you got a lot of guys at head coach that are still waiting for their due in canon. Mike Holmgren is still waiting. He has more Super Bowl appearances than Pete Carroll does. He has more conference championship appearances than Pete Carroll does. He has a higher winning percentage than Pete Carroll has. He is still not in the Hall of Fame, even though he has not coached in about 15 years. Pete Carroll has a worse resume than that, and Holmgren is still waiting for his due in the Hall of Fame. Mike Shanahan is still waiting. He has more Super Bowl wins than Pete Carroll does. He won 2 with the Broncos. He's got the same number of overall wins. He's got more conference championship game appearances. Shanahan hasn't coached in a decade. He is still waiting to get into the Hall of Fame. Tom Coughlin is still waiting. He has more Super Bowl wins. He's got the same number of overall wins. He's got more conference championship appearances. And he did it with 2 teams in terms of success, one of them being the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he had maybe the greatest run by any coach ever with an expansion team, taking them to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years. Almost unheard of. He's still waiting. You got George Seifert again. I don't know if Seifert's ever making it because of how bad that stint was at Carolina, but he's got 2 Super Bowl wins, and he is still waiting for his due in the Hall of Fame. Again, I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think he deserves to make it, but just some guys that have an equal, comparable, or even a better resume than Pete Carroll and are not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I don't think Pete Carroll's a shoo-in just yet. On top of that, I know it's one play. I know this play has been beaten to death. I know it's like being a dead horse at this point. But we have to talk about the infamous gaffe at Super Bowl 49, not giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch down by the goal line. I'm not saying it's right. I just want to make that very clear. I'm not saying it's right. But if you look at certain people that are borderline to make the Hall of Fame, if they have a career-defining gaffe like that, where the first thing you think of is the mistake they made in a critical situation, or it's such a bad blunder that you can't forget about it, it's tough for them to get in. Look at Jim Marshall. He started 277 games. He's one of the greatest Ironmen in the history of the NFL. He had over 130 sacks. He's one of the best defensive ends of all time. He played at a super high level for about 20 years. He's probably out because of the wrong way run. If it wasn't for the wrong way run, he's probably in. But because people associate Marshall with that wrong way run, he's probably not getting in, unfortunately. Gary Anderson, one of the best kickers in NFL history. He's on multiple all-decade teams. You think of the top 3 kickers in NFL history, you're probably thinking Vinatieri, Morton Anderson, and Gary Anderson. He's third all-time in field goals made and in points scored, but that miss against Atlanta is probably the first thing you think of when you think of Gary Anderson. That's a career-defining gaffe, unfortunately, and that might be what's keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. So Pete Carroll has that career-defining gaffe, and when you're borderline like that, it's tough to get in. Again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I agree with the logic. I don't think that's a good enough reason to keep him out. I think there's other reasons you can keep Pete Carroll out. I don't think that's a good enough reason. But it is something to keep in mind, especially because there is a huge logjam at coach. Aside from the guys like Mike Holmgren, Mike Shanahan, Tom Coughlin that should probably get in at some point, you've also got Andy Reid when he retires. He's getting in right away. Bill Belichick is obviously a shoo-in. So add all those guys on top of it, and think of how hard it is for a coach to make it as it is. They usually have to wait a while. It's going to be tough for Pete Carroll to make the Hall of Fame anytime soon. Now, is that saying that Carroll will never make the Hall of Fame? I think he'll make it at some point. I think he's going to make it at some point, but it's not going to be for a while. I will put it that way. It is not going to be for at least 15 years, 20 years minimum. He's going to have to wait a fair amount of time. And if you think that's too long for a guy like Pete Carroll, think about this. Think of Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher had a higher winning percentage than Pete Carroll did. He has the same resume in terms of 1 Super Bowl win, 2 Super Bowl appearances. He had more conference championships, and unlike Pete Carroll, he didn't flame out in multiple locations. Pete Carroll flamed out in New York and flamed out in New England, the 2 teams behind me right here. Bill Cowher never flamed out anywhere. And Cowher needed 15 years and an expanded 2020 Centennial class to get in. It took him a while for him to get in, and he only got in because of the expanded class. So if he took about 15 years, what do you think Pete Carroll's going to have? Especially with guys like Holmgren, Shanahan, and Coughlin still not in the Hall of Fame. Again, I think he's going to make it eventually. We're letting guys in at coach as senior committee members. There's more people getting in the Hall of Fame now than ever before, which is good. You got guys like Buddy Parker probably getting in this year. Don Coryell got in last year. Dick Vermeil got in the year before that. So the senior committee could absolutely put him in at some point, but I don't think he's making it in anytime soon. You're probably going to have to wait at least 15, 20 years before we think about Pete Carroll as a Hall of Famer. Not saying it can't happen, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon like Andy Reid or Bill Belichick will again in the moment that they become eligible. But what are your thoughts? Do you think Pete Carroll is a Hall of Famer? Do you think he belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to subscribe to my main channel, Jarrell9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is JG9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.